Oh my goodness. Juggling those different screens, man, that's a challenge and a half right there for somebody this late in the evening. Oh, can you guys not hear me? Give me a 5x5 if you can hear me. 5x5 if you can hear me. 5x5. Okay. Uh, Eagle Lover said she didn't have any sound, so I was worried about it. I had some technical difficulties coming into this. How is everybody doing tonight? Tonight is the most underrated holiday of the entire year in the United States. This is November 10th. Some people may think that it's Veterans Day Eve, but no, it is the Marine Corps birthday. And contrary to what the title said before, Yankee Watchdog said something about it. It is the 248th birthday of the United States Marine Corps, my favorite institution. First off, tonight we have to have a toast. So if you are drinking tonight, choose your poison and pour yourself a drink. So tonight, I'm not usually a rum drinker. I'm usually a bourbon drinker, but tonight we have a very special bottle of Sailor Jerry, and I am drinking it because this is probably what the Marines at Tunn's Tavern in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on November 10th, 1775 drank, because that was the cheapest drink there was in the colonial times. But I'm going to raise a glass right now at the beginning of this to say happy birthday, my fellow Marines. Oh, that's some good stuff. That's some good stuff right there. Okay, so for anybody that doesn't know, and if you've been around me for any amount of time and you don't know, then I apologize because I should have drummed this into you. I'm a Marine veteran. I spent almost 10 years in. Every year since 1995 on this day, I have sat down and I have had a drink, raise a glass and salute to all my fellow Marines out there. And a couple years ago, I started doing this with the YouTube channel, and here we are. First off, if any Marines pop into this live stream and into the chat, you say so, and I will post the link, and you guys can. In fact, I'll do that right now, and we will invite the Marines up. Actually, if you want to know the truth, guys, seriously, if there are any veterans out there that would like to come up and share this panel with me, you be my guest. You guys come up there. If I know you, I will get you on, and we will talk memories of our time in service. Some facts. Let's talk a little bit of facts about the United States Marine Corps. As I said, 1775, November 10th, Tun Tavern, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Continental Congress issued an order to raise a company of Marines to act as shipboard security on naval ships. And so they went to Tun's Tavern. So there's a reason why alcohol is so ingrained into the Marine Corps psyche, because we literally came about in a bar, and we ever since then we've been tearing it up. So they raised a company of Marines and they fought in the Revolutionary War. And a couple things came out of the Revolutionary War that a lot of people don't know about. So on the Marine Corps cover, they wear the white cover with the black band and the black brim. So on the officer's cover, on the very top of that, there's an embroidered cross on top of that called the quatrefoil. It looks like 4 teardrops. The reason that is on there is because whenever they were doing shipboardings during the Revolutionary War, they'd have marksmen up in the masts of the ships, and they could look down, and the British Royal Marine uniform looked exactly like the Marine Corps uniform. I'm going to say it that way because the British copied the Marines. I mean, let's face it, we are originals. Well, anyway, so they put this quatrefoil on top of the cover there, so that the Marine sharpshooters weren't poking holes in officers' heads, no matter how much they wanted to at times. So there's that one. And then you guys have heard the term leatherneck. All right. So the way that came about is if you look on the Marine Corps dress uniform here, let me pull this back up. Okay. Where is it? So if you look on his dress uniform right there, he's got that big thick collar going around his neck. What that is in reference to a leather gaiter that they used to wear on their neck to protect against sword cuts whenever they're doing boarding procedures. So that's where the term leatherneck came from. All right. So let's move forward a little bit in history. So the Marine Corps, they kept them around after the Revolutionary War, and they went into the War of 1812. And the Marine Corps, its first taste of battle after the Revolutionary War was at Bladensburg's Maryland, and the Marine Corps stood fast and held their ground while the militia units on either side of them retreated in the face of the British as they were advancing on Washington, D.C. So even though they lost the battle, they impressed the British officers so much that whenever they got to Washington, D.C., the British burned down every single public building, every single government building in D.C. They burned down except for the Marine Corps barracks. Now, that's the official story. I was stationed at Marine Corps barracks from 93 to 95, and we learned the lore. We learned all about it. Truth be told, chances are that the reason why they did not burn the Marine barracks down was because that is where the U.S. Navy housed their entire ration of rum and grog. So that's where they kept all the liquor. So the Marine Corps got one of the best PR departments. And so the official story, it's because the British respected the Marines so much. But in reality, it's probably because they didn't want to destroy all that liquor. Okay. So then we move forward in time, and you all have heard the Marine Corps hymn. They go the halls of Montezuma. All right. So that line out of the Marine Corps hymn comes from the Battle of Chapultepec Castle during the Mexican-American War. And the Marines, there was a battalion of Marines, and they assaulted this castle. And the only way they could get to this castle was by this 1.5 mile long causeway that was about 20, 30 feet wide. And the Marines lined up, and they assaulted across this causeway. And every single Marine officer and NCO was either killed or wounded in this action. So if you look on Marine Corps uniforms, the dress uniforms now, the blue trousers have a red stripe down the side of it. That is called a blood stripe. And what that signifies is all the NCOs and all the officers, because the enlisted Marines, the everybody below corporal does not wear that blood stripe. So it signifies the sacrifice that the NCOs and officers made during that battle. All right. And let's backtrack. I forgot something. I forgot to mention the other line in the Marine Corps hymn, the shores of Tripoli. So during the Barbary Pirate Wars, if you guys don't know the history of that, the Barbary pirates were pirate states along the north coast of Africa and the Mediterranean, and they were capturing ships of European ships and American ships and making the governments pay ransom for the crews. Well, Thomas Jefferson was it Thomas Jefferson? I think Jefferson was the president. Anyway, the president said, "Nah, this ain't gonna happen, right? This ain't gonna happen. We're not gonna pay ransom." So he sent 8 Marines to Cairo, and from there they gathered a bunch of Bedouins and North African Arabs or North African tribesmen. One of the tribes was the Mameluke tribe, and that's important here. All right, that's important to the story. So they marched from Cairo, Egypt, all the way to Tripoli, Libya, which is in Libya now. It used to be just Tripoli, the potentate. And they attacked and they defeated the Barbary pirates and they freed all the hostages. And the 8 Marines were led by Lieutenant Presley O'Banion. And he did such a good job leading this force across the desert and attacking the Tripoli that they gave him this sword, and it's called the Mameluke sword. So if you watch, whenever the Marines are marching and the officers have their swords, that is called a Mameluke sword. You can look it up. It's actually pretty neat looking sword. It's a heck of a lot better than the NCO sword that I carried when I was in. But anyway, I digress there. Little sour grapes there because I didn't have such a cool sword. But anyway, so we move forward in time, and we get to World War I, and the Marine Corps went over with the American Expeditionary Force, and they fought the Germans were advancing in France, and they were throwing every unit they could into the in front of the Germans, trying to slow them down. So they threw the Marines in there. Now, historically, all these European countries, they had just come out of the era where they were lining up and volley firing at everybody. So they did not practice marksmanship. Well, the Marine Corps, since day one, had practiced marksmanship. So the Germans were advancing on the Marine position, and the Marine sharpshooters, the sharpshooters, the regular Marines were picking off Germans at 400 or 500 yards, and the Germans were just losing their mind. They couldn't understand how they were getting killed so easily. So the Marines turned around and they advanced, and they went into Belleau Woods. If you haven't heard of that, Belleau Woods is called the Bois de Marines, the woods of the Marines in France. And the Marines went in there and had to dig the Germans out, and this turned into a month-long battle and high casualties. So before I go on, so Skanes is asking if this is the rum from Kentucky. No, it is not, unfortunately. That Brexto or whatever it is rum that we got was delicious. There's still some up on the counter. I told Angela I would not finish it, so that's her thing. Anyway, back to the story. So my tie-in with the Battle of Belleau Wood in World War I actually have a direct contact to that battle. So when I was in high school, I went to Wentworth Military Academy in Lexington, Missouri. And as a freshman, I took Latin. And the president of the school, Colonel James Sellers Sr., taught the Latin class. And this man was amazing. When I knew him, he was the oldest or the highest decorated living Marine veteran. And he was a machine gun platoon commander at the Battle of Belleau Woods. He was wounded twice, got gassed, and just a phenomenal man. So he actually had a World War I helmet on his shelf that one of his Marines carried in the battle. He did not get to have his. Because he was wounded and carried off. But he got a helmet from the battlefield. It's a remarkable man. Anyway, so fast forward, they make it through World War I with distinction, and that's where they got the name the Devil Dogs. The Germans named them Teufelhunden, all right, which is German for devil dog, and the moniker stuck. Well, after World War I, you guys have heard of the Banana Wars, down in the Dominican Republic and Cuba and all the Caribbean states. So the Marines were down there and basically ran the gendarmes in Dominican Republic and what's the other one? Actually, not Costa Rica. Anyway, they ran the police. So the NCOs and officers of the Marines were the leaders of these police forces, and they fought a very bloody and very vicious war against the guerrillas. And that's the first time Chesty Puller, who is an icon, he is a Marines Marine, he gained fame there because he and another guy covered themselves in mud and walked into a guerrilla camp and blew one of the guerrilla leaders away with a Browning automatic rifle at point blank range. Totally destroyed the insurgency and put it down and saved the island for the Del Monte Fruit Company, whoever was the big fruit company there, because that's who they were fighting for, the sugar cane and fruits. Anyway, so they get through that, and you see that if you guys watch the news, you see the modern air support where they're going in, they're close air support, and they're bombing the enemy, and the planes are flying really low to the ground. So the first time in American history that a plane was used to bomb an enemy formation was during the Banana Wars. And A.J. Cunningham, or A.A. Cunningham, was the father of Marine Corps aviation. He was literally dropping bombs by hand out of a biplane into the jungle. And so that's where every time you see an F-18 or an F-14 or an F-16 or an A-10 doing a close attack run on some enemy position, you can trace that directly to the 1920s and a Marine Corps aviator. I think it's pretty cool. You know, I'm not trying to take anything away from the Army and the Air Force. They do a great job, but let's face it. Again, you guys are copying us. All right. Oh, and we're modest too, by the way. So then we get in World War II, and the Marine Corps went from about 40,000 troops to several million troops in the course of 5 or 6 years. Well, actually, it was 4 years. So I've got a tie there too. This is interesting. So one thing you'll notice is, as Marines tell these stories, especially guys that are as old as I am, we were still the guys from World War II were still alive. The guys from World War I were still alive. The guys from Vietnam were still in service when I joined. And so I got out of boot camp and went to Quantico, Virginia, which is the big Marine Corps base there. And there was a barbershop in Q-Town, that's what we called Quantico, and that's where we would go get our haircuts. And this guy, he was the last person in Virginia that was licensed to use a straight razor to cut heads or cut hair. And he would shave the sides and the back, and he would take this straight razor and lather your head up and get it all the way down to the skin. He called it peeling the onion. And this guy was old, and he was a horse Marine in Tianjin, China. So the 4th Marine Battalion was stationed at the international colony in China, and they rode horses. And he was one of the last Marines out of China before the Japanese took it and captured what was left of the battalion prisoner. And this guy would tell stories of riding these horses out and fighting Chinese bandits and talking about getting into gunfights with the Japanese before Pearl Harbor. And it was just amazing stories. And then also in Quantico, there was a bar that Marines had been going to this bar since the 1800s. And it was, as a young Marine, it was a privilege to sit at the same booth. They had plaques where all these famous Marines would sit, and it was a privilege to sit at the bar where Chesty Puller had sat. You know, it was just it was amazing. Just a storied history and just awesome times. Okay, so we get through, or we're into World War II, and the shores of the Iwo Jima line out of the Marine hymn. So everybody's seen the famous picture of the Marines raising the flag on Iwo Jima, I hope. If not, here, hang on a second. Let me pull this up. I'll show you a cartoon representation of it. All right, so we're coming back. We're coming back. All right, so this is a representation of the Iwo Jima Memorial in Washington, D.C. And so the Marines raised the flag on Mount Suribachi, and a famous picture was taken, and it was used. This photo was used during World War II for the 4th war bond drive, or was it the 7th war bond drive? And the guys in the picture were pulled, the survivors, the ones that survived the Battle of Iwo Jima, because only 3 of the was it 5 or 6 people in that photo survived the battle. They were pulled off the line, sent back to America, and they were in this war bond drive. Now, what people don't realize, and it's a little known piece of American history, that by early 1945, America was completely bankrupt. They did not have money. They did not know, the government did not know how they were going to fund the war. And the American public was extremely war weary. They were tired. They'd lost their sons. They'd lost their husbands. And they were just tired of it. And so this last war bond drive, this picture got people so motivated that they funded the war to the end of the war. And it was very successful. Okay, now Richter makes a comment here. So he says that famous picture was a reenactment. Actually, that's a misnomer. Not necessarily reenactment. So what happened was they sent a patrol to the top of Mount Suribachi, and they raised a. Oh yeah, I got it right up here. Thanks, Dorothy. I completely forgot I had it up there. They raised a flag, and so everybody could see it. And the division commander wanted the flag that was flown above Mount Suribachi, and so they took it down. And as they raised the second flag, which the picture here behind me, that's a picture of the second flag raising. Joe Rosenthal was a AP correspondent, and he just happened to be standing there at the top of the mountain with this second patrol, because the guys in this picture went up on a patrol to run a telephone cable up to the top of the mountain so they could put an observation post up there. And so he got that picture, and there was another gentleman there that took a movie picture of it too. So you can see that. You can go online and find that one too. So it's not that was a reenactment. It was actually the second raising of the flag, and it just so happened that the Rosenthal was there at the right time in the right place, and snapped that picture. So, and if you want a really good retelling of this story, yeah, I am too, Richter. It's late, man. We had a long day. I'm tired too. Flags of Our Fathers, excellent book. The movie, not quite as good as the book. They don't do as much detail in the movie, but I highly recommend it. I if you can't read the book, watch the movie, because it does a good job of detailing what happened to the guys during the battle and how it went. And then if you like that one, Clint Eastwood also did Letters from Iwo Jima, which is based off of letters that were found from Japanese soldiers that had died on Iwo Jima. So they made a movie out of that, and it's a fantastic book, a fantastic movie. So that's where the Sands of Iwo Jima comes from. After World War II, they drew the Marine Corps down, just like the rest of the military, because this is a lot of people don't realize this nowadays. Before World War II, the standing Army and the standing Navy and the standing Marine Force were extremely small. And what they were used for was a cadre. In case there was a war, they could draft all these guys, and they could mobilize all the National Guard units, and they would have a cadre of professional soldiers. Well, after World War II, the military-industrial complex started coming out, the one that General Eisenhower warned us about started, and they drew them down. Korea rolled around, and the United States was woefully underprepared. And it's only by the grace of God that the North Koreans did not take the entirety of Korea whenever they invaded. And had it not been for the Army units and the Marine units that were shoved into the Pusan perimeter, Pusan, if you look on a map of Korea, Pusan is right down there at the very toe of the peninsula. Had they not shoved as many units as they could into that perimeter, they would have taken it over. And then they did the famous left hook in Incheon and pushed the North Koreans all the way back almost to the Chinese border. And that's where Chesty Puller. Now Chesty Puller was very, very famous in World War II. He won a Medal of Honor. He was in charge of the 7th Marines, but in Korea, they pushed the north, winter rolled in, and the Chinese got involved. Now, somehow they managed to sneak several 100,000 Chinese across the border, and they attacked all across the peninsula, and they hit the Marines at the Chosun Reservoir, which is probably the most widely celebrated. Let's face it, it was a defeat. As a Marine, I want to call it a victory, because we walked away and we killed boatloads of Chinese. But the simple fact is we had to give up ground. And the Marines fought a retreat in sub-zero weather, 72 miles from Chosin down to the Sea of Japan, and were boat lifted out right before the Chinese came and took the port facilities. In fact, as they were pulling away, they were blowing up. The engineers were blowing up the quays that the ships were moored to. So they made it through Korea, and then they started growing the military and the military industrial complex. And the Marine Corps grew. Vietnam rolled around, and it went in full force. Now, I'm not gonna. There's a lot of good stories coming out of Vietnam for the Marine Corps, and actually all the military that was there. It's one of those things where we didn't lose the battle, we lost the political war, right? So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail there, but one of the things that came out of the Vietnam War, if you ever get a chance to go to Washington D.C., go see the wall. Seriously, the Vietnam Memorial Wall. It is probably one of the most moving places in Washington D.C. And you see guys there all the time, and unfortunately they're falling by the wayside more and more often. But you could go there. When I was there in 1986, you go there and see guys leaning against the wall crying because their buddies were there. So seriously, it's a very moving place. And one of the cool things about it, there's a statue there, and it's the three grunts, and they're standing shoulder to shoulder. The one in the middle's got a M60 over his shoulder, and they're all looking off in the distance towards the wall. And fast forward to 1987, I was in Yuma, Arizona. I was stationed in Yuma, Arizona, and the Navajo Code Talkers, which are these dudes were some of the baddest. These guys were warriors through and through. So if you don't know who the Navajo Code Talkers are, during World War II, the Japanese were breaking our codes. So the Marine Corps drafted a bunch of Navajo Indians, and they created their own radio code, and it was completely. In fact, as far as I know, until they actually posted what everything meant, it was never broken by any military, and they didn't declassify it until well after World War II. But these guys had their annual meeting in Yuma, and so we did a dinner for them, and me and two other Marines, they dressed us up in Vietnam kit, and I had the M60, and we walked out onto the floor that was in this big dining hall, banquet hall type of thing. And we walked out there while I don't remember what they were playing, but we walked out there and we stopped, and it was so moving. These dudes, they were 70 years old, and they had tears streaming down their eyes, man. It was very moving. And then I got to sit down and talk to them, and these guys are phenomenal, seriously. And again, they're I think there's only 2 or 3 of them left. I could be wrong on that. I was just reading an article at work about them, and I was like, hey, there was a picture of a guy, and I was like, hey, I know this guy. I met this guy. I got to talk to him, So, but yeah, so the I don't even know where I was going. Oh, the wall. So yeah, so Vietnam, if you ever get a chance to go see the wall. And then there's all kinds of good books about Vietnam, good history books about it. It's a shame, and it unfortunately, Korea started the trend, and Vietnam just carried it on of the military being very proficient and capable of doing its job, and the political leadership of this country being unable to close the deal. And what's up there, Spags? Hey, I put the link in. I put the link in the chat. I think I did, didn't I? I put the link in the chat. If I told everybody, if any veterans want to come up and swap sea stories, I'm more than welcome to bring you lesser branches up here so we can talk. You can even make crown jokes. Well, there's another thing. Guys. You will hear Marines and Army and Navy and Air Force and Coast Guard, and I guess Space Force now, bag on each other. We do it because we love each other. Seriously. I dog on Navy. I married into a Navy family, and I dog on the Navy. Something. Shut your dirty pie hole, Spags. Just shut your dirty pie hole. We are the branch. We are the most cost effective branch. Anyway, but we do it because we love each other and we respect each other. You know, if it weren't for the Navy, the Marine Corps could not get where it's going. You know, the Marine Corps turnaround. The Marine Corps is famous in World War II for amphibious invasions, right? Do you know what the largest amphibious invasion was in World War II? Omaha, D-Day. And the Army, the Marine Corps lent some Marines to the Army and taught the Army how to do amphibious landings, and they pulled off D-Day in the face of overwhelming odds. And they literally stormed Fortress Europe, you know. And then, well, you know, and the Air Force hasn't been around that long, but we still appreciate them, man. We still appreciate them. They drop bombs on bad guys, so we don't have to, you know. Dang, Scanes, you got uncles in the Marines, you got brothers in the Navy. Man, how come you didn't join? Okay, Spags, you know what? We're the men's department of the Navy. That's what we are. So, you know, so we'll bag on each other. So don't think that we're hating on each other, you know. Yeah, some of the best dudes I met in the Marine Corps were Marines too. All right, so now we're post-Vietnam. Military had a lot of problems. Marine Corps was no exception. The drug use was rampant, morale was low, funding was almost non-existent in the late 70s. In fact, when I joined the Marine Corps in 86, we were still having funding issues. You know, and the reason I joined the Marine Corps, well, basically, truth be told, the reason I joined the Marine Corps was because it was the only recruiting office open when I went by the station. Long story. But, you know, my dad was a Marine. My uncle was a Marine. My dad did a genealogy report for college. And there was a great uncle that fought in Cuba with the Marines. You know, so we got a long family history, joining the Marines. And in my life, I was spinning my wheels. I was doing nothing. And I would have joined the first recruiting office I stepped into. I would have joined, and it just so happens it was the Marines. And it was aside from my family, it was probably the best decision I made in my entire life, because it probably kept me out of prison or out of a grave. Seriously. I graduated high school and got my head on sideways for about a year and a half after I flunked out of college, you know. So I go to boot camp, and there are still Vietnam veterans in the Marine Corps at that time. And there's some of the cadre I went to 29 Palms. I went to San Diego. There are two Marine Corps recruit depots. The West Coast is in San Diego, and the East Coast is in Parris Island. Everybody east of the Mississippi goes to Parris Island. Everybody west of the Mississippi, actually all the males on the East Coast go east or west of the Mississippi, and then all the females end up going to Parris Island. And when I was in, they had segregated platoons or recruit companies, so the male and female did not mix. All right, and it's only been recently they've been experimenting with mixed gender platoons at Parris Island. I'm gonna keep my opinions about that to myself, because I'm gonna keep my opinions about that to myself. Let's just leave it at that. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I just don't agree. Anyway, so I go to boot camp, and I ended up being a computer operator. I took they've got this god awful test, and if anybody in chat took this test, just put a great big 1 in the chat. The electronic data processing test, the EDPT. God, I had to take that thing 5 times before I graduated. Before I graduated boot camp, and they decided that I was going to be a good computer operator. And I can't complain about it. I hate computers. I can't complain about it because it gave me a good life for my family. So I was extremely lucky. My time in the Marine Corps, I got to travel around quite a bit. I was stationed in Yuma, Arizona, and then I went to Okinawa, Japan. Then I went to Camp Lejeune, and then I went to Mare Island, which is up in the north end of the bay. I went to Marine Corps Security Forces there. Then I got stationed on the USS Ranger in North Island. While I was there, ended up in Desert Storm, Operation Southern Watch, and Restore Hope, which is Desert Storm, the Gulf War. Southern Watch was the blockade of Iraq after the Gulf War, and then Restore Hope was the invasion of Somalia. Now, complete full disclosure, never got shot at. I never got shot at in a war while I was in. Closest I got to Somalia was about a quarter mile. We were anchored in Mogadishu Harbor on Christmas Day, 1992. Was it 90? Yeah, 92. No, 91. It was before. It was the December before Black Hawk Down. We were there in December, and Black Hawk Down took place in October. So whatever year that was, 91, I think. 91 is when I was there, because 92 was Black Hawk Down. Anyway, so I never got shot at. Did get to do some really cool stuff, and so what happened was, the DoD decided to take all the nuclear weapons off of all the Navy ships except for the subs. Oh, Angela says it was December 92. Okay. So they were looking for a reason for us to stay on the ships. And some of you may already heard this story, and I'm sorry if I'm being redundant. But anyway, they were looking for a reason to keep us on the ships. So my detachment was the first detachment outside of the MARSOC community to MARSOC means Marine Special Operations Capable. But we were the first ones to learn this VBSS, which was Vessel Boarding Search and Seizure. And basically what we did was, if a ship needed to be stopped at sea, they would issue a warning. They would fire a warning shot across the bow, and if they still didn't stop, they would drop us onto the ship, and we'd take over the ship. And I had some really good pictures of us doing some training operations, but I had them on an online photo thing, and they decided they were going to start charging people. So they're holding all my photos hostage right now, or I'd share some with you. But so we got to do some really cool stuff. Now, when I was stationed on the Ranger in San Diego, I met someone very special. I met my lovely wife, and after a whirlwind romance, this is before I deployed to the Gulf, we decided to get married, and we conceived our son and came back from the Gulf. And you guys, if you know anybody who is a military spouse, you need to tell them, and you see them tomorrow, you need to tell them thank you, because the life of a military spouse is extremely hard. This woman that I was married to was extremely young and was pregnant, and her husband was in a war zone, and she had to deal with that up until the 8th month by herself, because I was overseas. In fact, she managed to call me. Her dad and mother were her mother was big in MWR, which is the recreational department on base, and her dad was a senior chief in one of the aviation units. So she knew how to work the system. She called me. I was sitting on duty in the ship, and the phone rings, and it's my wife. And somehow she got a direct line to our detachment, and she was extremely worried. I could tell by her voice she was upset about something really bad. And first thought in my head was, God, she wrecked my Jeep. because she had my Jeep. I had 84 CJ7, and I was like, God, she wrecked my damn Jeep. And she's calling me, and she told me, she's like, I'm pregnant. And I was like, woohoo! And we went out to the E Club on Yokosuka, Japan, the naval base there, and proceeded to get drunk as skunks, all on my dime. So, but she did the first 8 months of her first pregnancy by herself. Well, she had her parents there, but it's not the same. It's not the same at all. So we came back from the Gulf, and she's 8 months pregnant. They decommissioned our ship, so they told us we all had to go someplace else. Got orders to Washington, D.C., and we did a self move. In retrospect, probably not the best thing to do with an eight month. Actually, at that point, she was 8.5 months pregnant. But I knew where every single military hospital was between San Diego and Washington, D.C. And thank God she did not have the baby on the road. We got to Washington, D.C. on April 15th. We got into the hostess house, which is it's a barracks, but it's a hotel. And you can ask Yoda. They're not some of them. The one at Fort Belvoir was not the nicest one I've ever seen. Seriously. We had to share a restroom with another newlywed couple. It was terrible. But we got there on the 15th, got our apartment on the 17th. And the reason we had to get our apartment was because the Navy had condemned 400 housing units on Anacostia, which is just outside of Washington, D.C. And so everybody that was getting transferred into the area had to live off base because there was a 3-year waiting list to get into base housing in any other place. So we got in there on the 17th, and she had our son on the 19th, and she was a real trooper. And someday I'll get her to tell the story of how much she loves Army nurses, because it's such a good story. You love Army nurses, don't you, honey? But anyway, I was stationed at Marine Corps Barracks, 8th and I. That's where the silent drill team is, and the president's own the orchestra that you always see playing at presidential functions. And the infantry unit, there's an infantry company there, and they guard Camp David, and they do the evening parades. I'm going to say this about my time there. It was very cool being there and learning everything. Yeah. Hey, I told you she wasn't too happy with the whole thing. It was a very historic place, and I wouldn't trade my experience in Washington, D.C. for anything. Be hard pressed to get me to go back and do it again. Seriously. DC in the early 90s was terrible, and it's only gotten worse. It has only gotten worse. But we did 2 parades a week. We did the one at the barracks on Friday night. And then on Tuesday nights, we did the one out at the Iwo Jima Memorial. Now, I did not march. I was one of the greeters, and I would stand at the gate, and I would meet people, and I'd salute them and welcome to the barracks. And then I would escort close your ears, honey. You got your ears closed? I would escort the prettiest lady to their seats. Yeah, always used to amaze me. Just okay. So, how do I put that? Marines are kind of based, okay? We're kind of borderline degenerate, just by nature. And I used to hear these guys, all these single guys would complain because they couldn't find dates, and they could never meet girls there. And it used to boggle my mind. I'm like, dude, twice a week, you've got beautiful women hanging off your shoulder. They love your uniform. They think you're the coolest thing since sliced bread at that point in time. And they're in town temporarily. And you can't find a date. And I was like, come on, guys, just use your heads. But hey, I can't live their lives for them, right? I was happily married and went home. In fact, the parades were one of the reasons why I got out when I got out, because we had a newborn son. He was a year and a half old. And, I wasn't getting home I wasn't getting home twice a week between May and October until 1 or 2 in the morning. And then I'm turning around and back at PT at 06, and it was a 30, 45 minute drive from my house. I live 15 miles away from the post, and it was a 45-minute drive because of traffic. Traffic in DC sucks. We lived in Springfield, so I drove the outer loop. So they decided I was in during the Clinton era, and I was in DC whenever Don't Ask, Don't Tell happened. The steroid scandal happened with the coffin bearers. A lot of stuff happened there, and they were drawing the Marine Corps down. When I joined, it was 60,000. It peaked at 89,000. If I remember, these numbers may not be correct, but it gets you in the ballpark. But it peaked at like 89,000, and they were drawing it down to pre-war levels. Well, that meant that our deployment time was going to go from 40% to 60%. I knew my marriage wouldn't survive that. I knew I did not want to do that to my children, and I didn't want to do that to my wife. So we decided it was time to get out. I'm torn on the decision, and Angela can tell you that we've been married long enough. She can tell you this. I'm really torn on the decision. I hated getting out of the Marine Corps. I hated the fact that I woke up one morning and I didn't want to put on the uniform. I didn't. In fact, we were laying in bed, and it was about 2.5 months before my enlistment was up. And I rolled over and I looked down and I said, I don't want to put the uniform on today. And she looked back at me and she said, well, it's time to get out then. And I was like, okay. So we got out, and I had officers and staff NCOs that I greatly respected. These guys were some of the best leaders I'd ever had in the Marine Corps, asked me to stay in, and I couldn't do it. Now, in retrospect, after I walked away from it, I did truly miss it, and I still, to this day, I still miss it. In fact, whenever Iraqi freedom was going to happen, had I not been 40 pounds overweight at the time, I probably would have asked Angela if I could have re-enlisted. In fact, we were talking, and truck drivers in Iraq at the time were making $180,000 a year tax free. Now that was 6 years worth of my salary at the time, and she was going to let me do it. I was going to get my CDL, and I was going to go over there and I was going to do it. And then I don't know if you guys remember, there was a American truck driver that got captured and was held hostage for months, and he finally escaped and got out. But the day that happened, we were watching the evening news, and they had the truck burning, talking about how they killed some Pakistani drivers and kidnapped this American. And she turned to me, she says, "You're not doing it. You're not going over there." And I was like, okay, but I've always tried to support the Marines after that. Our son was in Young Marines. We adopted a Marine during Iraqi freedom and in his unit, and we sent them all kinds of goodies and gave them support. Oh, I think she's come back here with the phone because I can hear it. Anyway, so we've always tried to support the Marines. All right. So that's it about the Marines. Now the Marine Corps today is completely different from when I was in. The training, I'm going to say the training is probably better. There's a saying in the Marine Corps is every Marine a rifleman, and when I was in, I did not go to infantry school. We got infantry training in boot camp. We got a week at a field training battalion, and I didn't have that. We got that at our unit a little bit, but I was a computer operator first and foremost. I could do the infantry stuff, but it was never a primary thing for me. And now they do the Crucible, and everybody goes to some form of OIC. Infantry guys go through much more extensive training than non-infantry, but they do that. The equipment is way better. Oh my God. When I worked for the DOD, I worked for the National Guard, and they're using most of the same equipment as what the Marines were using. And it always used to amaze me, the rifles and the machine guns, I lugged around when I was in ROTC. When I was in Sea Duty too, I lugged around an M60, and they've got these new M240Bs, so much nicer than the one I had to carry around. Excuse me. And the uniforms are better quality. That we were still rocking the poly cotton BDUs, the camis, and they were even the lightweight tropical stuff was hot, and they didn't last long. And so just a lot better stuff nowadays. Plus they've changed their doctrine. So when I was in the Marine Corps, they were still living off the Cold War doctrine. In fact, when I joined, it was the Cold War. The Berlin Wall didn't come down until a couple years after I got in the Marine Corps. So we were still living on Marine Corps doctrine or Cold War doctrine. And of recently, they have started changing. They've gone back to their roots, and they're more of a expeditionary type of force. That during the Iraqi freedom, the Marine units that drove on Baghdad were further inland than any other Marine unit had ever been in the history of the Marine Corps. And it was an important mission for the Marines, but it wasn't what they were meant to do. They were not meant to be a conventional fighting force like the Army. And, but the industrial complex and the services are always fighting a piece of the pie. And that's what the Marine Corps decided to do. Well, after the war on terror was over, they've gotten rid of the tank battalions, which I'm not 100% sure I agree on, but I understand, because tanks are hard to transport by boat and they're hard to get onto land. They've put Tomahawk missiles onto Humvees, which go out and look at that. There's videos out there that's pretty darn cool. And they've even got these Humvees that have howitzers, 105 howitzers on the back of them. Dude, they're just the stuff that they're doing nowadays is phenomenal. And they've been preparing for the last several years to fight China. It's this next war that we're going to be in, and yes, there is going to be a war. This next war we're going to be in is going to be different than anything we've seen over the last 50, 60 years. And I certainly hope that the leadership is ready for it. And I certainly hope that the young Marines are ready for it. And I don't know if you guys follow the news, but the Army just released a new campaign that does away with all the wokeness. Doesn't talk about two mommies, doesn't talk about people's skin color. It's about being hardcore and going out and killing people. And they just sent 800 soldiers. They literally called these guys one day and said, "Hey, you got 48 hours to report to recruiting school, where you learn how to be a recruiter." And that's unheard of, because that's a permanent change of duty station. And they do orders, they move families, they do all this stuff, and they didn't do that to these guys. So they are trying really hard to make their numbers up. Yeah, Virginia, I think. I hope it's not too little, too late. That's all I could say, because these young kids, people give millennials a bunch of crap. Seriously, people give the millennials a bunch of crap. But let's face it, those young men and women carried the war on terror for 20 years. They carried it on their shoulders. There's a huge segment of that population that went through stuff a million times harder than what I did. I can honestly say I do not know anybody that was killed in the line of service, in combat from my Marine Corps time. I do know some guys that were wounded during the Gulf War, and Somalia too. But they don't, they get a bum rap, and this latest generation is becoming more and more conservative because they see what the rest of the millennials have done, and they are now the radical ones, the patriots and the conservative. What are they, Gen Zers? I don't know. I'm not even sure what they're called. They are the radicals, and I think it's great, and I agree with Virginia. It's headed in the right direction. Just hope it's not too little too late. Oh, okay. I'm going to top off my drink. Now, if you guys have never tried Sailor Jerry's, it's actually pretty good rum. I'm kind of shy. It's 92%, and it's spiced, but it's actually pretty good. Quick tidbit trivia. Y'all heard of grog? You hear that in all the old movies they talk about, give me grog. Probably Pirates of the Caribbean. They talk about grog or anything like that. Grog was literally water and rum, and they would water it down to the point where they would get a ration of grog every day. And if I remember correctly, it was a half a pint. I could be wrong there. I'd have to go look it up. Yes, there's a tattoo behind every label. Can you guys see that? Let's see right there. See it? See right there? I didn't mirror my screen, so I'm having a hard time. So there's the tattoo. But so grog was watered down rum, and it was watered down just to the point where they could get a little bit tipsy, but they would never get drunk because they unless they broke into the whiskey locker and started drinking it. Hot butter rum. I've never had that. I've heard of it. So, okay. So where are we now? So we talked about the Marine Corps. We talked about my feelings. You know what? Here's something, and this pains me to say. This pains me to no end. I am not sure that I could tell anybody to join the military these days. And as a Marine veteran, that kills me. I've talked to some of you guys online about this, off the channel. And quite frankly, I feel like I was lied to. And I know a lot of veterans feel the same way, especially guys from my era, the post-Cold War era, pre-GWAT era. Really feel like we were lied to. And Semper Fi, man. Semper. Is that a... Oh, is that the 1st Marine Division? I don't have my glasses on. He's got his avatar. Here, let's pull this up. His avatar. Yeah, his avatar is one of the Marine Division logos. So, Light Raider, where were you stationed? Probably, maybe chewed some of the same dirt. But I just don't know if I could do it. And unfortunately, the powers that be in this country seems they're bound and determined to get us into a shooting war with somebody. Coffers must be running dry, or they've got something big that they need to cover up so they can distract us, But I just hope and I pray that we're ready for it. And I'll be honest, I disagree with a lot of people. I still think our military. Oh yeah. We definitely chewed some of the same dirt. Almost got ran over by an Amtrak on the Amtrak trails at Camp Lejeune. We were out 4-wheeling in my Jeep and almost got ran over there. And then I was all over Okinawa. I went to every single base and every single office there in Okinawa, being an IT guy. But where was I? Oh, I still think that our military is head and shoulders above everybody else in the world. The question is our leadership? Is our leadership of the same caliber as the enlisted people and the officers that are in the Marine Corps? And that's the big question in my mind. All right, enough of that. I'm getting kind of dark here, and I don't want to be dark. This is a happy day, a happy day. little bit about the Marine Corps birthday ball. You guys, so every year on this day, every single station has a birthday ball, and basically it's a reason it's a reason to get dressed up, and you go there and they have a ceremony where they wheel out this great big birthday cake, and the youngest Marine and the oldest Marine on post get the first two slices of cake. And um, I hate to say this, but a lot of places, miraculously, the oldest Marine on post is usually a general. Whoever the attending general officer is usually the oldest Marine on post, just by his rank. He may not be actually the actual oldest one, but they accommodate them. And the cool thing about it was, I told you I went to military school, so I was in the marching band. I played trombone, and we were actually, for being a little military school, we were actually well known across the country because we performed so many performances, and we did such precision marching and stuff. Well, we would always go play at the Marine Corps birthday ball in Kansas City. They always held it down on the plaza. There's not the Marriott. Yeah, the Marriott down on the plaza. And so we would go down there and play. And so, as a young kid going to the military school, you see all these Marines with their dress blues and their ribbons and everything. And it really made an impression on me. Seriously, it really did. And then like Yoda says, the Marine Corps birthday balls were so much fun, and did we go to the one in DC? I don't remember. I honestly don't remember. As a young corporal, young sergeant in DC with not very much money, and getting the wife out was kind of hard sometimes, And I'll tell you what, man, it DC was really rough. You realize that I was pulling full-time duty as a Marine, and then I was working on Thursday evenings to Sunday. I was working for Atlas Moving Company. I was putting 40 hours in just to make ends meet because we were living off base, and DC was so damn expensive. I had one of my Marines in Washington, D.C. that was on food stamps. And okay, it was just the Coronado one. Okay. So I had one of my Marines that was on food stamps, and that's just a shame. And there's Marines now that are on food stamps. They're Army and Air Force and Navy guys whose families are on food stamps. And that's it's number one, it's a testament to how jacked up the economy. I almost used a bad word. It's a testament how bad the economy is, but it's also a testament to how bad they treat service members. They do not get the support that they deserve, and they're asked to do the hardest jobs on the planet. And I'm gonna say this, in peacetime, those Navy guys that run the flight deck on an aircraft carrier, that is the most dangerous job in the Navy. We had in the 2 years I was on there, we had several people blown either over the side of the ship because they got caught in the backwash of a jet engine, or blown over the elevator and falling 30, 40 feet down onto the elevator. There you go. It says daily ration of grog was a pint of rum and a quart of water. Got to water it down. Got to water it down, because the last thing you want is a bunch of drunk Marines or drunk military guys on a ship. Now, I'm not going to say I never got drunk on a ship. In fact, I'm not going to say that I didn't smuggle alcohol on board at times, and I'm not going to say that when we were in the Persian Gulf that we did not make jungle juice in a canteen. I'm not going to say I did that, but yeah, and it was, we drank a lot. I'm not going to lie. We drank a lot. We had 12 days off the whole time. The 6 months we were on our float, we got 12 days off, and I swear to God, we got drunk every single day. In fact, in 1992, the Marine Corps birthday, November 10th, we pulled into Jebel Ali, and every Marine that was not on duty, so there were 47 of us, 48 of us, went to the Holiday Inn in Jebel Ali, United Arab Emirates. We had $4,000, and we drank $4,000 worth of alcohol in about 5 or 6 hours. And we behaved so badly that the second time we pulled into Jebel Ali before we went to Somalia, they would not let Marines stay in the hotels. My buddy and I had to find this hotel, this little hotel all the way downtown by the souk in order to get a hotel away from the ship. But they were checking IDs and they would not let Marines stay in the hotels because we did so much damage to that first hotel. Oh, they're not dry. They're not dry. Trust me, they're not dry. We had a good time though. We had a very good time. Okay, so I got this thing I want to share with you guys. Let me pull this up. So we're almost done here, man. I've been going for about an hour. I'm tired. We got a lot done. We had somebody come up and give me a hand today while we were working, and we got a ton of stuff done. I am so tired right now. Let's see here. Nope, that's not what I want. Bear with me. Come on. Oh, stop sharing. There we go. It helps. It really helps if you know how to use the software. So we're going to share. Okay. Boom. Put this here. Now, what this is the best Marine Corps quotes, and we're going to break this down. We're going to see what it says. Can you guys hear that?
Some people spend an entire lifetime wondering if they made a difference in the world, but the Marines don't have that problem.
Okay. So, no, we don't. And I was joking about it early in the live stream. We are very proud of our service, and every Marine worth their salt knows that, and that they were part of something that was bigger than the sum of the whole was larger than the sum of its parts, and it's because of the way we're trained, the way they teach us our history and the discipline and the esprit de corps. We can be jackasses. I'm not going to lie. We can be complete jackasses with our letting everybody know that Marines, but it is what it is. And this video is not very long.
Freedom is not free, but the U.S. Marine Corps will pay most of your share.
Oh, did you guys heard that? I didn't throw that screen up. Here we go. You know what? I'm just gonna leave the screen up there so you guys can see it, because I'm tired. So tired. I'm not pushing buttons right. So, this is one of those things that the Marine Corps prides itself on, being able to take care of the job. Little known fact. Okay, let's some numbers here. These are I looked these numbers up today. So there are 19 million veterans alive in the United States today. 9.9% of them are Marine veterans. The Marine Corps has the smallest budget out of all the armed services, and it used to be, I don't know what it is now. I did not look this number. When I was in, the Marine Corps got one nickel out of every Department of Defense dollar, and we did the job. And case in point, Grenada. The Marine Corps was 25% of the forces on Grenada, and it took 80% of the objectives. So they do this just as a habit.
There are only two kinds of people that understand Marines and the enemy. Everyone else has a second-hand opinion.
Yeah, I can't. I can't extrapolate on that one anymore. That one's perfect.
To observe a Marine is inspirational. To be a Marine is exceptional.
Okay, so this one, it is exceptional being a Marine, and it's exceptional because very few people decide to do it. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Anybody, any young person of good health, even remotely athletic, can do it physically. Physically, it's probably more straining than some of the other ones, but it's not undoable. The thing is, it's the mental aspect, and you have to have uh, the mental toughness to make it through. They tear you down and they build you back up in with the mentality that they want you to have. And when you come out of boot camp, you're bulletproof. Seriously, you are bulletproof. Um, I did I did stuff after I got out of boot camp that I look back on and I grit my teeth and I'm like, God, I'm so lucky to be alive. And it's the mentality that they put in you. We're physically Marines are usually no better than anybody else. In fact, there's a lot of units, a lot of people in the Army that are much better physically than Marines. It's the mental thing. All right. And it's just part of the training. It's the training that they give us.
We're not accustomed to occupying defensive positions. It's destructive to morale.
Yeah, I think this one holds. I think this one holds true for every military person. You're better off. You're better off if you're facing the enemy. You're better off attacking them. The best defense is a good offense. Let's see.
Marines I see as two breeds, Rottweilers or Dobermans, because Marines come in two varieties, big and mean, or skinny and mean. They're aggressive on the attack and tenacious on defense. They've got really short hair and they always go for the throat.
I love this one. I love this one. I was a computer operator. I told you I was a computer operator. Then not very manly. I'm not gonna lie. It's not the manliest profession in the world. Um, I went to sea duty, and they taught us all the close quarter combat and the vessel boarding, search and seizure. And you can ask Angela. The Marines I was stationed with on that boat were some of the meanest and nastiest guys in the world. And we would lay down our lives for each other. We could mess with each other, but you don't mess with our Marines. You don't mess with our fellow Marines. And it's like that in every single unit, especially the combat arms units, and it's a true. And I was big mean and slow. He forgot to mention slow, but yeah.
In the Marine Corps, I was used to people doing what they said and saying what they mean.
Okay, this one was a hard one for me because when I got out of the Marine Corps, I got a civilian job, and you can ask my wife. In fact, even today, I've been out of the Marine Corps since '95. What's that? 28 years, and I still do not understand the civilian workforce. I do not. I honestly do not understand it. When I was working for the DoD, I was in a culture that I understood and a culture that made sense to me. And I still, to this day, I do not understand the civilian workforce. Um, some of the stuff that goes on, and it just boggles my mind.
The American Marines have it and benefit from it. They are tough, cocky, sure of themselves and their buddies. They can fight, and they know it.
Okay, this one is extremely high praise. So General Mark Clark was the commander of the U.S. Army forces in Italy during World War II. He is a very highly decorated, highly respected general. And for him to say that about the Marines is very high praise.
Courage is the endurance for one moment more.
Okay, this one, you know what? There are tens of thousands of Marines, soldiers, sailors, airmen, coasties. This one, that's a salute to them, man. Those are the guys that have been out there for the past 30, 40 years since I got out, or 30 years since I got out, and have been laying their lives on the line for you and I. And they've shown courage on countless occasions, and we should again raise a glass to them. Tell them thank you tomorrow.
You cannot exaggerate about the Marines. They are convinced to the point of arrogance that they are the most ferocious fighters on Earth. And the amusing thing about it is that they are.
Okay, enough said. Right, that one. I can't disagree with that. You know, we're cocky for a reason.
The bended knee is not a tradition of our corps.
Okay, this one. This is another one. This is another one that really got to me when I heard it. Seeing military units, military members bending knees over the past 3 or 4 years to certain ideologies and certain political movements, that really hurts. It really does. It breaks my heart and it makes me sad. And I hope that we can recover from it.
Old breed, new breed, there's not a damn bit of difference so long as it's the Marine breed.
Hoorah. Okay, so this one. Here's the old breed and the new breed. Everybody that joined the Marine Corps before I joined the Marine Corps is old breed. Everybody that joined the Marine Corps after I joined the Marine Corps is new breed. And it's like that for every single Marine out there. And the Marine Corps changed, standards changed, everything changed, but Chesty's got it right. Marine's a Marine. I love that one. That is such a good quote.
Marines die. That's what we're here for. But the Marine Corps lives forever. And that means you will live forever.
So this comment, the mythical Gunny Sergeant Hartman, that is Arlie Ermey's character in Full Metal Jacket. And he's telling this in boot camp. And it's true. You know, my legacy after I die, how do I put this? My legacy carries on with my family and the Marine Corps. And as long as the Marine Corps is around, I'm around. You know, and it's you know, when we're looking at our mortality, that's something really important to consider.
Without discipline, there is no Marine Corps.
That's a true statement. But let's be honest. Let's be fair. Without discipline, there's no Army, there's no Navy, there's no Air Force, there's no Coast Guard, there's no Space Force. Without discipline, we will lose every single war coming our way from here on out.
The Marines I've seen around the world have the cleanest bodies, the filthiest minds, the highest morale, and the lowest morals of any group of animals I've ever seen. Thank God for the United States Marine Corps.
Okay. This statement is funny on several different levels. So Eleanor Roosevelt did not like Marines per se. She appreciated them, but she didn't like them. She thought they were crude. She thought they were boisterous. And she would rather not associate with him. But as the president's wife, she had to be around Marines because the Marines guard the White House. There's some ceremonial Marines there, and they guard Camp David. There's a story. They were at some function in D.C. The president was there and she was there, and there was a Marine there, a gunnery sergeant who was an old breed. This dude was Banana Wars, and at that time before World War II, being a Marine was not a very highly respected job. It was not a good profession. People of low morals tended to become Marines. Other people went to college or joined the Army, became officers, and do all that. So being an enlisted Marine was not very high on the scale of respectability. And they were at this function, and this guy was drunk off his butt, and he went into the elevator with her, and she lambasted him and told him he was one of the crudest people she'd ever met, and blah blah blah. And he turned around and looked at her and told her that was okay because she was one of the ugliest women that he'd ever seen. And that's a Marine in a heartbeat. Seriously, it's just you especially if they've been drinking, you just say what's on your mind.
Demonstrate to the world there is no better friend, no worse enemy than the U.S. Marine.
Okay, General Mattis. Let's talk about him for a second. If you guys don't know who General Mattis is, he was in charge of the Marine forces in Iraq during the surge, whenever they were fighting the insurgency, and then he was one of the cabinet members for Trump. Loved his service in the Gulf and Iraq. He became a politician. I'm just going to say it out loud. In my mind, that does not detract from his military service, but he became a politician, and it shows.
Success in battle is not a function of how many show up, but who they are.
Again, unlike the Soviets, who I faced during the Cold War, is quality over quantity, and the Marine Corps has shown that time and time again. Like I talked about the Chosin Reservoir, the first Marine Division faced down almost 500,000 Chinese and walked away from the battle, bloodied and battered, but holding their heads high. They brought out all their wounded and all their dead. In fact, there's photos out there of trucks going down the pass to the ocean with frozen dead bodies strapped to it because they brought out all their dead. They did not leave anybody behind.
Once a Marine, always a Marine.
I'm just gonna let that one go. Can't even talk about that one. That's self-explanatory.
Among the men who fought at Iwo Jima, uncommon valor was a common virtue.
Okay, so when I was in Washington D.C., they had the 50th anniversary of the Iwo Jima landing, and they brought every survivor from the battle that they could bring to Washington D.C. And we had the Tuesday night parade at the Iwo Jima Memorial, and I got to meet these guys. I got to meet the widows. They brought all the Gold Star wives in too that they could get. The chaplain that gave the benediction on the day of the landing gave the benediction at the ceremony. If I remember correctly, Yoda was there. She can attest to what a powerful thing it was. And these guys, the thing that struck me about the survivors of the Battle of Iwo Jima. Now this was a month and a half long, little over 30 days battle where over 10,000 Marines were killed and countless wounded. And it was brutal. It was bloody. It was vicious. These guys looked like a grandpa. These guys looked like ordinary guys. These guys were not some 10-foot tall mythical mythical beasts. These guys were ordinary guys that were thrust into the most vicious, vile, and violent situation a man could be put in, and they survived it. And that was the thing that struck me about them is they were so normal.
I can't see how a single man could spend his time to better advantage than in the Marines.
Okay, so Sergeant Major Dan Daly, he is the highest decorated Marine. He won 2 Congressional Medals of Honor, one in Cuba and one in World War One. In fact, he's credited with the Marines were faltering in an attack, and he stood up in the face of enemy fire and shouted at his Marines, "Come on, you sons of bitches! Do you want to live forever?" And led his Marines to victory. The guy's a literal legend.
Do not attack the 1st Marine Division. They fight like devils.
That was after the Chosin Reservoir in Korea that I told you about earlier. The Chinese did not want to mess with the Marines because they effed them up so badly.
Retrieving wounded comrades from the field of fire is a Marine Corps tradition more sacred than life.
Do what?
Drop the link to the video for anti.
Oh, to this video?
Yeah.
Okay. I gotta take the cat. Angela, I'm sorry guys, I can't read the chat because I'm doing all this other stuff. She said Anti wants the link for this. Here, let me do that. Boom, boom, boom. Give me a second. I'll drop this. There's the link to this video.
If I charge, follow me. If I retreat, kill me. If I die, avenge me.
You know, I hate to say it. No, I don't hate to say it. It's a lie. I don't hate to say it. It's just, it bothers me that I have to say this. As citizens, this may become pertinent for us, and we can, if you're not a Marine veteran, you can learn from this, and just remember that what the founding documents say and what the founding fathers said and did. That's all I'll say right there. That's all I can say about that.
Mess with one Marine and you will mess with them all.
Again, you don't mess with my fellow Marines. We had an incident when we were in Sydney, and we had this kid. This kid was a screw up. God, he could. You lock him in a room with a pillow and an anvil, and he would break the anvil and lose the pillow. Seriously, no idea how he could do it. He was such a screw up. We're in Sydney, and these locals started messing. We were in this bar, and he was drunk, and they started messing with him, and we took care of the situation. We shut these guys down post haste, and he in his drunkenness, he's like, "Thank you guys for saying." We're like, "Shut up, just shut up." We locked him into a bathroom stall and made him stay in the stall until we were ready to leave. But you don't mess with our buddies, man. And more people need to start taking that stance.
Marines don't know how to spell the word defeat.
Hyperbole, but we'd like to think it's true.
A Marine is a Marine. There is no such thing as a former Marine. You're a Marine, just in a different uniform, and you're in a different phase of your life. But you will always be a Marine because you went to Paris Island, San Diego, or the hills of Quantico. There is no such thing as a former Marine.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not gonna lie, I disagree with this one. There are Marine veterans out there who have disgraced themselves that I do not want to associate with and call them Marines. I'll call them former Marines. I don't want to call them Marine veterans. I'll call them former Marines because they have disgraced themselves. Now, side note, General Amos. I got to meet him. When I was in Washington D.C. One of the jobs that I did while I was at Marine Barracks was we ran fiber optics to all the general officers' houses there at Marine Barracks, and General Amos was I cannot remember what position, but he was one of the general officers. He wasn't the commandant at the time. He was one of the staff officers for the Marine Corps, and I got to meet him. Super nice guy. Super nice guy.
I have just returned from visiting the Marines at the front, and there is not a finer fighting organization in the world.
You hear that? Hey, Spags, you still in here? You hear that? Army, General MacArthur, one of the greatest Army generals ever. That's what he said. Yeah.
For over 221 years, our Corps has done two things for this great nation. We make Marines and we win battles.
Yep, that's what we do. It's in the job description.
Casualties, many. Percentage of dead, not known. Combat efficiency, we are winning.
Okay, this one. So this Colonel David Shoup, Tarawa. So the Tarawa Atoll was about 2.5 miles in size, and there were about 12,000 Japanese troops on it. And the Marines had to land on the beach, and they went in and they hit a coral reef about 500 yards away from the shore. So the boats could not get over this reef. They had amphibious tractors that could crawl over the reef and then go to the beach, but the Higgins boats that were in the second and third and fourth waves could not get over. So they had to get out, and then they had to wait. And this water was up to their chins, and there were shell holes, and these guys were stepping in these shell holes, and they were going underwater, and they're carrying 100 pounds worth of gear, and they're drowning. The whole time this is happening, they're getting shot at. The first couple of waves of Marines at Tarawa took like 50-60% casualties. Now, Colonel Shoup was in charge of the landing team at Red Beach, if I remember correctly, and he took a group of guys. He gathered a bunch of Marines, and he attacked across the island, and they made it across the island, and he turned around, and him and two other guys were the only guys with him, and he had to fight his way back across the island. And it was only like 400 or 500 yards, but the Japanese were shooting at them from every single direction. If you want to hear a story about tenacity and the violence of warfare, go get a documentary or read a book about the Battle of Tarawa. It is one of the most vicious battles that took place in World War II. And the sad thing about it is the Army did an invasion. I cannot remember where it was, but they did an invasion a couple days after the Tarawa landing, and they took a much better airfield than what Tarawa was. And there's argument that the battle at Tarawa and the desert Tarawa were unnecessary. I think this is the last one. Yep, that's the last one. All right, guys, listen. I really appreciate you guys showing up, seriously, and sharing this time with me. And I really enjoyed sharing my knowledge and my experience with everybody. As you can tell, it's an important part of my life. It growing up in the military academy and being in RTC and everything molded who I am, but being in the Marine Corps solidified that, for better or worse. And I'm not I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying I'm the best husband, or I'm not saying I'm the best dad, but it made me who I am, and I certainly hope that it made me the type of person that is capable of handling um, everything that's coming our way. And I certainly hope that when all is said and done, that um, it was all worth it. To me it was. The time I spent in the Marine Corps was worth it, even though I felt lied to. Quick story. Quick story before we go. I'm almost done. I'm running out of steam here. So when we were at Self Reliance Festival, I started talking with a gentleman. They're actually looking at our sun ovens. They were him and his wife were from Texas, and they were looking at buying a sun oven. And I started talking to him, and his name was Sonny, and it's Sonny. I cannot pronounce it, but anyway, this guy's a former Spetsnaz soldier from the Russians, Cold War Russians, and he was a high speed operator. And this guy was my enemy during the Cold War. This guy would have slit my throat without even thinking twice if it came down to it. And I would have pulled a bullet right through his brain pan without even thinking about it. But we started talking about it. And we started talking about our experiences in the military. And one thing I realized from talking to Sonny, he's a remarkable guy. If you go out and look him up, just if you do a search on Sonny, former Spetsnaz firearms instructor, you'll find it. See who he is. The cool thing about Sonny is, number one, he's completely honest. He doesn't sugarcoat anything. But as we were talking, the guys on the other side of the rifle, for the most part, and I hold special exceptions for people like the people in Hamas that just want to kill. I'm not talking about people like them. I'm talking about regular soldiers that have wives and kids and want to go home. They don't want to kill innocent civilians. We weren't too terribly much, we weren't too terribly unalike. And growing up, and I felt this until recently, growing up, America was always the good guy on balance. We did a bunch of shady shit. Seriously, we did a bunch of stuff that we shouldn't have done, but we were the good guys. Of recent, the United States is not the good guys. That's just my opinion. Seriously, we aren't the good guys anymore. I'm not saying we're the bad guys, but we're no different than some of the other bad guys, in my opinion. During the Cold War, you can make the argument that we were better than the Soviet Union as far as a moral stance. But we did a lot of bad stuff, and we're doing a lot of bad stuff now. And one of the things I want to challenge you guys to do. The simple fact is, history, the United States is not going to be around forever. It's just a historical thing, and there's nothing we can do about it. It's inevitable. But what we can do is we can plan as Americans, not United States citizens, as Americans. We can plan to be remnants, and we can plan to, after everything has fallen out and after all the pieces have fallen to the ground, we can plan on being there to pick it up and put it back together and build America back the way it's supposed to be, right? I'm not saying MAGA. I'm not saying Build Back Better. I'm saying this transcends that. This transcends the politics of that all. We are Americans. We have a birthright that for far too long we've let people walk all over that birthright, and we've sold that birthright for convenience and comfort. And it's my opinion. I could be wrong. I certainly hope I am, because the alternative, the alternative that I think is going to happen is extremely dark and extremely harsh. But we need to reclaim our birthright, And what form that takes and what that looks like, I'm going to let you decide. I can tell you what I think, but I would probably get banned off of YouTube. In all seriousness, I want you guys to think about that. And that's my challenge to you is prepare to become remnants and understand why we believe what we believe and be able to share our ideas with other people. All right. Until tomorrow, you guys, one more salute. It's almost Veterans Day. We're going to salute not only my brother Marines, but my brother soldiers, my brother airmen, my brother Navy, my brother Coasties. And what do they call Space Force? I'm not sure what they call Space Force. Geek? I know that was mean. I'm sorry. If you're on Space Force and you watch this video, salute, man. Till tomorrow, you guys go out and live a life done free.